rather, a war zone or the surface of some strange planet. What is the latest there tonight?
That's certainly true, Jim. And the latest is that we now have 5 survivors that have been pulled from this, as improbable as it seems, 5 people pulled alive from this wreckage. And we're also hearing reports from the scene, although not officially confirmed, that a group of Port Authority policemen trapped in the concourse beneath the World Trade Center in one of the tunnels down there is reported to be alive. There have been reports that they've been firing their guns to alert rescuers to the fact that they are down there and alive. This has not been officially confirmed yet, but if it does turn out to be true, it is one more grain of hopeful news that is coming out of all of this. Let me step out of the way for a moment and take a closer look at what you see behind me, the silhouettes of the remaining buildings, the remaining towers of Battery Park, illuminated against the white smoke still billowing out of there. That light haze is coming from high-powered portable lights illuminating the ongoing search and rescue effort. We were in Manhattan earlier today, as was Mayor Rudolph Giuliani, and he had this to say as he toured the ruins.
When you look up there and you don't see the World Trade Center, it's unbelievable.
Giuliani also met with New York's 2 senators, Hillary Clinton and Charles Schumer. They both got a look at the damage from the air and later expressed outrage, pledging to work with Congress to get as much federal aid as possible for the city. The search and recovery effort continues into the night, despite the dangers of another building on the verge of collapse. Earlier tonight, the remaining 7 stories of the South Tower collapsed. Fortunately, there were no further injuries to firefighters and rescue workers. An army of dump trucks has been shuttling back and forth as debris is removed. And despite the massive destruction, there is still hope there may be more survivors. There's no telling yet how many died here. Relatives of the missing have been coming into Manhattan searching desperate for their loved ones. It may be many days yet before we get an accurate count of the missing. And the official death toll is still very low, but we got an ominous idea of just how high that may go earlier today when Mayor Giuliani asked federal officials to send the city 6,000 additional body bags in addition to the supply they already have on hand. Now, there is some good news about the city getting back to its normal way of life as close as possible tomorrow. Some of the bridges will be open. The Lincoln Tunnel will finally be reopened for the first time since all of this happened. Schools will be reopening tomorrow, except for all the schools below 14th Street, and of course that part of the city will remain closed and sealed off for a good many days to come as this desperate search and rescue mission continues. Live at Liberty Park in Jersey City, I'm David Henry, Channel 6 Action News. Jim?
And David, I don't know whether you have been able to hear about this at your location yet, but police did evacuate the Empire State Building and Penn Station tonight because of a bomb scare, but about a half hour later the all clear was given. No problem, but there was a major evacuation there tonight. Thank you, David. It will be some time, as David said, before we get any kind of idea as to the number of casualties in New York. And at the Pentagon, Mayor Giuliani says there have been 41 confirmed civilian deaths so far, plus 260 police and firemen. But obviously the death toll in New York will eventually climb into the thousands. Officials say they have recovered very few survivors, and in fact ambulances are sitting empty, and while hospitals have treated almost 2,000 people, many of those injuries have been suffered by recovery personnel and people who escaped the initial event. At the Pentagon, officials now believe that the original estimates of 300 make that 800 deaths are too high. It may be closer to 200. The investigation into the terrorist attack is unprecedented in terms of its size and scope. 4,000 special agents are involved, plus 3,000 support personnel. Word is that federal authorities have already identified more than 12 of the hijackers. Several of the hijackers have been traced to a flying school in Vero Beach, Florida. 2 of the hijackers did get flying licenses. Lawmen are also investigating a flying school in Minnesota. Police were led to a car at Logan Airport, scene of 2 of the hijackings, in which they found a videotape manual on flying jet planes, plus flying manuals in Arabic. Officials say the car is linked to 2 men with Saudi Arabian passports. Police raided a hotel room in Boston used by one of the hijackers and removed a bag, contents undisclosed. And lawmen removed 3 men from an Amtrak train in Providence, Rhode Island. They are being detained while officials investigate their immigration status. Attorney General John Ashcroft said federal agents are following hundreds of leads, but this they know.
The 4 planes were hijacked by between 3 and 6 individuals per plane. using knives and box cutters, and in some cases making bomb threats.
Sources say that much of the evidence gathered so far points to terrorist mastermind Osama bin Laden, but it's possible that the attack also involved other terrorist organizations, they say, including the Hezbollah in Lebanon and Fatah in the Palestinian territories. Authorities in the Bush administration say the White House was one of the intended targets of the terrorists. They say that the plane that ended up crashing into the Pentagon was first circling the White House. Why it left that location and went to the Pentagon instead is not known, at least not by us. Sources indicate that is why the president was delayed returning to the White House and instead shuttled between Florida, Louisiana, and Nebraska before flying back to Washington with a fighter jet escort. In Washington this morning, Bush convened a meeting of the cabinet by saying the attack was an act of war and that while cowards currently hide in the shadows, they won't be able to hide forever.
It will take time and resolve. But make no mistake about it, we will win.
It appears the Congress is poised to give $20 billion in emergency funding to the president to deal with this crisis. Action News reporter John Rollins is live in Washington tonight. And John, what is the latest in the nation's capital?
Well, the latest as far as the Pentagon, Jim, is that the fire there was declared under control today. Recovery of the bodies continued, but it has been slow going at times for several reasons. One is the precarious nature of the building itself. We are told there is some concern over parts of it possibly collapsing on recovery workers. Two, there have been some small flare-ups of fire occasionally. That has slowed things down. One of the most unusual incidents occurred around noontime. According to the Washington Post, what was believed to be an unidentified plane was circling around in the airspace above. People actually left the site. There was an evacuation order. It was later learned that the aircraft belonged to a federal agency, FEMA. But these are very tough times down here in Washington. Some people have turned to prayer, others to patriotic symbols. Mid-afternoon on the Washington Mall, we cross paths with a high school boy who feels the urge to just carry the colors.
I'd like to show our patriotism and strength to influence others in a time of need.
Later, a huge flag is unfurled on the fire-scarred walls of the Pentagon. About dinner time, the president stops by to thank the rescue and recovery workers for their sweat and tears.
Secretary Rumsfeld told me when I talked to him that he felt the blast shake the Pentagon. Even though he was on the other side of the building rocked. And now I know why. Coming here makes me sad on the one hand. It also makes me angry.
Members of Congress remembered the dead at a prayer service, mixed with their sorrow, concern that the highly organized terror cells that supported this may be planning a second wave.
Yeah, what we've heard is this was not the entire agenda. It wasn't just an aircraft for Pentagon and a couple of aircraft for the World Trade Center. There was more on the agenda. There may still be more on the agenda. We need to be vigilant. We need to be prudent. We need to be cautious.
Jim, in addition to that $20 billion resolution tomorrow, Congress may also take up a resolution that would authorize the use of force against those responsible for the terrorist attack on Tuesday, when it's determined who that is. We are told, or CNN is reporting, we should say that it would be similar, they say, to the resolution in 1991 that authorized the use of military force for the Gulf War. Live in Washington, John Rollins, Channel 6 Action News.
Thank you, John.